And we're here under this incredible dome. It's quite a surprise coming down that corridor and then boom, steam engine. 1895, Sowerby Bridge, Yorkshire.
This is a 1917 Melbourne. It's an electric car.
This is the first room in the Canadian Museum of Making. It's quite a surprise coming down that corridor and then boom, now that steam engine, I've checked out the sign, 1895 from Yorkshire, England. How do you get a Victorian steam engine into the foothills of Alberta, Ian?
But first thing you do is you go and beg the guy who owns it to sell it to you. That takes quite a while. That took me about a year. Finally, he decided he'd sell it to me because in England, there's been a tremendous number of steam engines that some well-meaning person bought, took apart, and then they never got back together again, and they ended up in a scrap dealer. So this was an important family object for Mr. Cudworth, and so he wanted to make sure that I was going to set it up. So I had an offshore drilling rig. I was back and forth to Norway, so every time I went to Norway, I'd go through and see Mr. Cudworth and say, hey, how about you sell me the engine? Eventually, he decided I was going to be an okay custodian of it, so we got it here. And then I went over for my holiday one year and took it apart and put all the pieces in containers and stuff, and then we shipped it over here. Yeah. So it's a really beautiful object built in 1895 and built at a time where really reciprocating steam engines have been completely figured out. Everybody knows how they work. And this is at the end of the evolution of a long evolutionary period, and then steam turbines take over from this. So this is right at the end. It's made to be a display object. So it's not just supposed to be an engine. It's finished in a way that is, sort of beyond the pale for something like this. And so it had those attributes, and that's why I wanted it.
And what work did it support when it was an operational machine?
So it was the power source for a woolen mill with about 100 booms in it.
So thousands of workers.
Yeah, there would have been at least 500 workers on that mill. And then it was coal powered, so it'd take coal, make it into steam, and then use the steam to run this engine. Yeah.
So it's the capstone of the steam era.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it switched over after that very quickly.
Yeah.
Well, it is beautiful. You can see the trouble they've taken to make the valves sparkle.
Well, and a lot of it, there's things that are round on it that don't have to be round. They could be square, but they wanted it to look good. It was important for them how the thing looked, and that's why it survived, I think. A lot of them, if it had been made more roughly, it probably wouldn't be here.
I get the impression you could maybe go switch it on.
I could.
You actually could.
Yeah, it runs on electricity, not on steam. When I really retire, then I'll get it going on steam if I'm still able. I have 3 levels of life that I live. So part of it, my commercial life anyway, part of it is tactical. I'm in town, get lots of phone calls, people come in and bother me. There's a strategic part where I don't want interruptions. I want to think hard about, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? How's it going to turn out? And so that's upstairs. And then down here is super strategic, where you don't want anybody to interrupt you. So I got a little office at the end here, which is like separate from everything.
It's down here.
Yeah, all these are designed so I feel really good in that place. So it stimulates the thought process. The place stimulates the process.
Well, can we see if that works? Because I have some strategy questions I'd like to ask you in your strategy.
Okay, well, come on down here.
Inner sanctum. Okay. This is, I can feel the warmth of that fire.
Sure, yeah.
That's beautiful. I'm feeling warm. I'm feeling the ideas flowing. I mean, we're in a moment as a country where the strategy for the next 100 years is going to come out of ideas and actions that might or might not come about. And yesterday, right now as we film, it's Stampede Week. So I've come to Stampede Week. It's the 60th year where I've come to a Stampede. My first one was in 1965.
Wow.
And we were going to an event yesterday, and you couldn't get close to it. There was a line of these huge black limousines, Suburbans, and it was because the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, was shaking hands in the event we were going to. Yeah. And he was talking to a lot of people. He's come out to listen. I understand he's got things to say, but he's seemingly doing a lot of listening. Okay. Everyone's got an opinion to share, but he's talking about building the big things. He's talking about legislation. Some of the oil and gas people are saying, well, you have to do these things in order to unlock what you say you want to do.
Yeah.
Here we are in your room of deep strategy. You're reading the news. You're plugged into all this. What's going on in our country right now, Ian?
I used to work in Peru. I built a couple of oil refineries down in Peru. And I talked to a guy once and he says, Canada is a solution looking for problems. And so that's the way I feel. I mean, we know what to do here. We know how to do the things that we do and make the least environmental impact in the world. We work to the highest standards. We're productive. We've got the best rock in the world. So we got the best gas reserves. We got the best oil reserves. The stuff that I know about, how do you make energy out of that? We know how to do that really well here. And we keep seeming to get it wrong. And so that, that's a bit annoying, but I think we eventually get to the right place, and perhaps we're in one of those times now. So I'm hopeful.
Is it through trial and error that we get to the right place?
Well, I don't know what I feel like it should be is it should start with thermodynamics. What makes sense? How much does it cost to get what I need? And I think all of us need energy, and we all need plentiful supplies of energy. We live well because we have energy. How do I get that the best way I can, making the fewest number of impacts where we live, and how do I get it for the cheapest price? So I don't want to wreck the place to get it, but I also want to get it as cheaply as I absolutely can. And so I have to do that, and that starts with thermodynamics. That doesn't start with a feeling. I feel like I want to do it as good as I can. Well, I have to convert that into a number somehow. How do I do it? And so I think we miss that. We miss the people that know how to do this in a thoughtful, economic, least damaging way.
So you could contrast that with, say, solutions by slogans, where we're going to put up a nice phrase that tests well with the pollsters, and that will be our directive. And that's not thermodynamics necessarily.
Yeah. Well, there's a saying on the wall that you probably can't see, but for me, it's like the saying says, action speaks louder than words, just not as often. And so, I mean, that's the way we have to live. We don't need to talk about everything. We need to figure out what to do. We need to verify that it makes sense, and then we need to do it. And then move to the next thing. And it's evolutionary. Every time we do it, we can get better than we did the last time. And so it's not static. I mean, we just walked through 1,000 years of people trying to do things better. But when somebody gets to shout at people doing stuff rather than having a logical position, that just disrupts the agenda, delays it, and makes more expensive for everybody. So the woodwork in here is copied after the Gamble House in Pasadena. And that's where the family, Procter & Gamble, so the Gamble family had their house there. It's probably the coolest building on the planet. And so I tried to copy as much of it as I could. And now we're coming down to where the engine is. Listen to the sound of these stairs. That didn't happen by accident. That was hard to do.
Now, is there an on switch for this?
It's around the corner there.
Okay. 1895, Sowerby Bridge, Yorkshire. And you worked directly with the Cudsworth family.
Yeah.
Because they want to make sure it
Mr.
went
Cudsworth,
to...
yeah.
Have they come out to see it?
He never got to see it, so I took pictures
Afterward.
with him. So yeah, he was pretty old when I was doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is about as evolved as a reciprocating steam engine can get. It's got a really, really high-end governor on it, because when you're weaving, if the speed of the engine changes, you end up with a line across your sweater. So the governor is like a mechanical computer, and it hunts for where you can set it for a speed, and then it'll hunt for that speed all the time. Yeah.
And to be this precise, 130 years after being built, it still operates to spec.
This one's like new, yeah. So I just haven't got it running on steam.
If you fired this up today with electricity, it would be running, therefore, off natural gas, maybe some wind. We're in Alberta, maybe even some solar would power this. But when it was built, coal.
Yep.
And we're in this era of, a lot of people call it transition. Others say it's transformation. Others say it's none of those things. It's something else.
Yeah.
It's addition, energy addition.
Yeah.
And this object is almost like a lesson in this change over time.
Yeah.
And we have a societal belief that we need to reduce the impact on the atmosphere, put in less CO2 to prevent warming from becoming a cataclysmic problem, if it isn't already. As you assemble this collection, you must have had these things in mind because you are involved in the big industrial projects of the Alberta carbon trunk line. You're looking at evolution of this Pathways project in Alberta that will decarbonize the oil sands. We have the Prime Minister right now talking about decarbonized oil, try to explain that. So why don't we start there? This vision of a decarbonized barrel of oil from Alberta, what's the origin of this idea?
Well, I think it's really continued evolution of trying to do more and do less damage when you do it. So we used to do a lot of things way differently than we did now, but we're evolving all of those things. And so oil's no different than anything else. We're trying to evolve and have lower impact all the time, less cost for less impact. That's what we're trying to achieve. And we've been doing that. I mean, the economic signals, as long as they're right, we will achieve the goal. But when you get the economic signals wrong, you can do some really crazy stuff. So, when I look at this stuff, I start when everybody talks about all the different energy sources all the time. And to me, I look at it and say, is it interruptible or is it baseload? If it's interruptible, it must be worth way less, because when I go to the light switch and it doesn't turn on because the wind isn't blowing, I think, well, that's not very valuable. That's not the kind of energy I want. I want it to turn on when I flip the switch. So when we confuse the sources and we mix interruptible and say, well, it's really cheap, it's cheaper than anything else, and then we compare it to something that's not interruptible, they're not the same thing. They're just, it's like a banana and an apple. And so I can't live on apples and I can't live on bananas. I got to have both all the time. So, it's the same thing. And what I think is we're trying to reduce continuously our environmental impact on the things we must have. And the things we must have, we're trying to make them cheaper all the time. It's an evolutionary process. It's been going on, like in this room, there's 150 years of it. So it's going on. But get the signal wrong and you can get way off in the ditch somewhere. And that's what we've been doing with a lot of this stuff. It's off in the ditch someplace.
Now, was there ever a government in the United Kingdom from the Industrial Revolution that said, industry, we want you to work on coal, just use coal for your industries because that's what we prefer you to do. It will have the best impact on the things we want to affect? Or do you think it unfolded differently?
Never. I don't think anybody ever thought of doing that up into the time when we all got in the developing world. We were all really rich. And so we were able to say things like that and we say, well, I don't care how much it costs. I want to do this. Well, that isn't a way to have a sustained benefit. What I have to do is I have to be chasing, how do I get more by making less all the time, by doing less damage? If I just say I want something, and, there's a great story. It's probably too long for this, but I'll tell it anyway. Russia's a centrally planned economy. They tell somebody out in the middle of nowhere, make tires for army trucks. We project we're going to need 3 million army trucks next year. We need 12 million tires. Go make them. So this guy out in the middle of nowhere starts making these tires. And about halfway through, somebody in Moscow says, we're not going to need 3 million trucks. We only need 1 million. They forget to tell the guy who's out in the tulips making the tires. So he makes 12 million tires for trucks that are never going to be built. We've been doing that a lot with this stuff. The government isn't smart enough to tell us what. It's too complicated. What has to happen is follow the economic signals. Are you doing damage? How much are you going to pay for that when you do it? So if you're emitting a ton of CO2, how much does it cost? Tell me that. Don't tell me how to mitigate it. Let me figure it out. And some people will die in the wilderness trying to figure out. Some people will figure it out and they'll reduce the cost of it and we'll have lower carbon energy when we do that. And it'll be cheaper. If somebody tells you what to do, especially somebody in Ottawa, I don't think they're smart enough to be able to do that.
Now, you've been saying this and thinking it for a long time. Have you got some evidence you can show me that it's working?
I work in Calgary. I got 4 people and a dog in my office. The stuff that we've done, so we were at Weyburn. We used to own 11% of Weyburn.
Saskatchewan.
Yeah, Weyburn's the largest project for sequestering man-made CO2 in the world. We used to own 11% of it, me and my partner. We essentially dreamed up and built the Sturgeon Refinery, the Alberta Carbon Trunk Line, and the sequestration sites that use all that. So sometime next year, my stuff will have put 50 million tons of CO2 in the ground. 50 million. The whole U.S., since it's been doing this, and it's been doing it since the 70s, it's put about 200 million tons of CO2 in the ground. So those are the kind of things you can do in here. Just let us do them. Just send us a clear signal and let us do them. And don't try and tell us how. Tell us what. If you tell us how, we won't, we'll be like everybody else. Carbon capture has 3 phases. The first phase is I have to get the CO2 and it has to be in a pure form, because if it's not pure, it's most commonly mixed with nitrogen. So the CO2 comes with nitrogen because most of the CO2 comes from burning stuff and the nitrogen was in the air. When it's mixed with nitrogen, the first step is I have to get to 100% CO2 because I have to compress it to a liquid, otherwise it's too big to move. So what happens is it's really expensive to get the nitrogen out, really expensive, like $100 to $200, $100 to $300 per ton to get combustion CO2 to pure CO2. And that's the first step. The next step is I have to build a pipeline to move it, and the pipelines are usually expensive. So, we spent $1.2 billion building the Alberta Carbon Trunk Line. That's not that big a pipeline. It's just the first step of what I thought was doing something in Alberta. So you have to build a pipeline, and the guy who builds the pipeline, he wants his money back. He isn't, he's not some green revolution guy. He's going to build the pipe. He's got a low cost of capital because he's sure he's going to get his money back. So that's a TransCanada or an Enbridge or somebody like that. And then on the end, you have to have a place to put it. So the federal government, in their infinite wisdom that came from before, said, we want you to put that CO2 in a pure sequestration reservoir. We don't want any more oil coming out of the ground when we do it. And so no one had ever put anything in those reservoirs before. No one knew anything about them. They're way down below where the oil is in Alberta. So Alberta, we know everything about geology because we've been drilling for oil here for 100 years. But way down in the basement, we don't know anything about it. We know it's there. We know there's a saltwater ocean there. We know we might be able to put CO2 in it, but we haven't put any in yet. Shell has done a bit, but so that's it. What's happened is when you put it there, it's like a really expensive landfill, and I have to pay to put it in the landfill. I can do that, but I have to pay. There's another use for this CO2. I can use it to get more oil out of the ground. And when I do that, I put a ton of CO2 in, and I get 2 barrels of oil back. And they help pay for all the things that I have to do it. And somebody decided, well, we don't want any more oil in the world, so we're not going to allow that to happen because that'll mean there's more oil. Well, if we don't produce it, somebody in Saudi Arabia is going to produce it. There's less oil in the world because we make some here. So we got it all wrong. We put these enormous financial incentives to put CO2 in the ocean when it's a valuable feedstock for Canada, for Alberta. Of course, we get oil out of the ground and it pays for the stuff we need. And we're doing this thing, we're drilling these exploration wells into the basement. We don't know if CO2 will go in there or not. It's just mind-bogglingly stupid.
Is there a principle here? Because you've got 2 kinds of natural resources in the world, right?
Yeah.
You've got the renewable ones,
Yeah.
like a tree.
Yeah.
It's going to grow again. You can
Yeah.
throw another one. But then there's the non-renewable ones. Maybe that's a copper body, or maybe it's oil.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel that we have almost a moral obligation to use the non-renewable ones, especially as efficiently as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And respect them at all levels, whether it's in the finding and production of them or the transportation, of course, in the consumption and final usage, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
You have to keep improving the efficiency
Yeah.
of your engines and your vehicles, for example. And in referencing what you're talking about, Ian, you're saying we're not using technology we have in order to get the most value out of a non-renewable natural resource.
Yeah, exactly right. And what we did too was we believed in the tooth fairy. We thought there's a tooth fairy someplace living that can do all this stuff in ways that we don't understand. And we got a bunch of young kids going and they could invent really good sounding tooth fairies that might work. But they're all just talk. They're not really at the scale that needs to be done to make a difference. There's no tooth fairy. There's nothing new. We've been figuring this out for 150 years. Smart guys have been working on it hard. There's no flash of light that's going to come and say, geez, I just figured out a way to revolutionize the world. The physics The thermodynamics and the economics are all well understood. And so what we have to do is apply what we do, the next iteration, try and make it better. The next iteration will be better. If we keep doing that, we can really do some amazing things.
Well, Ian, some might say you're kind of wasting your time because everything is going to be fine in 2050 because we'll have net zero. So why are you wasting your time? You're laughing at me. How come?
Well, has there been any discernible, it used to be 2030, has there been any discernible sign of progress towards these goals? Let me know what it is. Little Ian, working on these things, have done a quarter of what the whole U.S. did because that's the opportunity in Canada. We can do it here. But I didn't do anything transformative, revolutionary, anything. All of the things I did were evolutionary. And there's a zillion guys in this place that can do the same things I did. I'm nothing special. People here can do this. Just tell them what you want and they'll do it. But if you tell them something that's impossible, they'll just go do something else. They're pragmatists. They have to believe that there's economic opportunity in doing something.
This looks like lathes, 20-inch lathe from Lodge and Shipley. Is that from Britain?
So this one came out of the Ogden shops in Calgary. It was bought by the Canadian government for the Second World War. So they converted Ogden into wartime production. And my dad worked in a machine shop, and they bought this lathe out of Ogden. And then when I was a kid, I worked on it. So it's too new, except it's sentimental to me.
And a lot more examples of working lathes here.
Yeah, and these are all in evolutionary processes. There's a common theme in here about how things evolve and how they get better and how they do stuff faster, some more safely, and things like that. So that's sort of this part of the room.
And now what's in here?
Well, there's some really cool things in here. So on the wall over there, those are tools that a cooper would use to make wooden barrels. And so those are all the things you need if you're going to make a wooden barrel by hand. And I thought those were pretty cool. So I bought them off a granddaughter of a guy who was from Winnipeg, and she wanted them to be preserved. So she was happy that I got them.
I bet she'd be happy with that. Look at that. All the parts. So complicated just to make what looks like a simple wooden barrel.
Yeah. And he worked for Canada Distillers, so they used to make their own barrels in Winnipeg, and he was the guy who made them.
All that whiskey and rye and
we're still drinking.
Yeah. Well, and what's around here? This looks like a scale.
So this is a really cool thing. So in here, when you make a steam locomotive, there's a giant leaf spring that goes in the front of it. So when you make that leaf spring, you don't know how stiff it is or all those things, and you have to adjust it so it's right. So you make the leaf spring and you put it in here like this. Mm-hmm. And then you want to push this down to test it. Of course, that's no trivial push you got to push on it. It takes about 150 tons to compress the spring. So this is a 10-pound weight. And so this is set up so when you move this weight, it goes back and forth through all these levers here. You can see there's a pivot, and there's a pivot, and there's a pivot, and there's a pivot. Goes back and forth through all these levers. So 10 pounds here comes out at 150 tons down there. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've met some guys, and what they do is they buy old companies and break them up and sell all the stuff off. So I got friendly with a guy. He phones me one night and he says, we just bought Cleveland Twist Drill, and there's a bunch of stuff in their lobby. If you want any of it, you can have it. So Cleveland Twist Drill is like an old outfit. Before Cleveland Twist Drill, this is the way a drill looks. And so when you're drilling a hole, you go like this, you drill a little ways, and then the cuttings plug it up, and you got to take the drill out, break the cuttings out, and then keep going. So a guy named Morris invents the idea of a drill with a flute on it to take the cuttings out, and he never builds one, but Cleveland buys the patent. And so this is the prototype machine to make a twist drill, and this is the twist drill that they're making in here. And it's all completely adjustable because they didn't know how steep the thing should be or what pitch it should be. So all of this is adjustable. Once they figured it out, then they fixed it. And so you can still buy a Cleveland twist drill today. If you buy a little drill index with all the drills in, it'll be Cleveland if it's a good one.
This doesn't feel worn at all. It feels like the edges are sharp.
Yeah, I think once they figured it out, they didn't use it. They made it into a static machine like that one over there. So it didn't need to be adjustable anymore.
This proved the concept.
And this is such a rare thing. It should be in the Smithsonian, but they can't have it. I got it.
Well, I would think the National Science Museum of Canada, which I've been to in Ottawa, Science and Technology, I think it's called, would love to know this is here, because it is a testament to your success, but also Canadian success. It's unbelievable. We've come from thousands of years ago of technology all the way into the next room, into an era that's more recognizable. More on that in a minute.
But the message is, it's evolutionary. If you send the right economic signal, we will keep progressing, and you can waste that energy. If you try and tell the world the way it should be, it's okay to tell it the way it should be. Don't tell it how to get there. Let it figure it out. We'll be amazed at the solutions that come out of that. And so that, that's what this whole place is like, these things are amazing because somebody figured it out in response to an economic signal.
Ian, on this walk, we paused to talk about policies on carbon capture, because we want to see carbon pulled out of the atmosphere. It's us people who've put it there. Let's pull it out, as well as improve all of our other processes for the future. This pump here, tell me about this pump, because it kind of ties into some of what we're talking about.
This is a pump, and so when you turn this thing here, this piston's down in here, and they go up and down, and you sink this in the water. So this is sunk in a little creek like that up to about there. And as you turn this, the water comes out here. So you're trying to lift the waters.
Right. So you're going to put a hose or a pipe on there.
Right. Yeah.
Lift it up.
That might go up like 100 feet. So this is a way to take it in a creek and pump it up there. And it's kind of an analogy for the CO2 capture business. So you got a river flowing by. This river had all water in it. But you could think of a river that's 90% oil and 10% water. So the first step is I want water up there. I got to separate the water from the oil. That's the first step. Right. Then when I get the water, I got to get it into this pump somehow. And then I got to put the energy into it to pump it up the hill. And so most of the CO2 we get is contaminated with nitrogen. So I got to get the nitrogen out. And then it's a gas, so I have to compress it and turn it into a liquid so I can move it. Because if I was trying to move the gas, if this was a gas pipe, it would be 5 feet in diameter. Right. So to get it down to a size where I can afford to move it, I have to turn it into a liquid. And then I can put it in the pipeline and move it somewhere. Now I got to do something with it. But all of this process it's energy intensive. And so anything I can do to save energy, so if I could figure out a way to get pure CO2 rather than contaminated CO2, way better, way cheaper, like hundreds of dollars per ton will be saved depending on the purity of the CO2. And then if I can figure out a way to get it at higher pressure. So when it comes out of a car engine, it's at atmospheric pressure. Or if it comes out of a burner in a SAGD project, it's at atmospheric pressure. If I can have it under higher pressure, I save all the energy that it takes to turn this. So all of these things are evolutionary improvements. My own feel is you go to the easiest places first. You don't go to the toughest places first. So if I'm going somewhere, I want to look for a place where there's pure CO2. And if it's not pure, I want as close to high purity as I can get, because it's going to cost a lot of money to get up pure. And then the next thing I want to put it somewhere where it has some value. So I don't want to just dispose of it and waste it. I want to put it somewhere where I add value. So the stuff I've been doing plays those two themes.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think is, say, a decade from now, if all the knowledge and if we have good policy comes about, what do you think the result will be in Canada?
Well, we can reduce the CO2 intensity of the energy that we got a lot, because we've got the best rock in the world to do it. We got the best places to put this stuff. And we've got people who know how to build the things, how to do it. I mean, no one can do it better than here. I've done more in my office than Norway brags about. It's like, we can do stuff here of colossal scale. And the reason is because we live in a place that's opportunity rich, it's economically rich, we can do these things and convert them and really have things that make sense. We're just squandering the opportunity.
Now, when it comes to storage, I sometimes hear a couple of objections, and I want to put them to you. You're going to pump that CO2 underground, but then it's going to escape into the atmosphere again, all over again, right? You'll have to capture.
That's nonsense. If we put them back in oil reservoirs, there was oil and gas down there for 10 million years before we got there.
And it didn't escape.
Didn't come out. It was there because it couldn't escape. That's where we're putting it back into. If we put it into an oil reservoir, if you put it into a saltwater ocean, I don't know what the hell's going to happen, and neither does anybody else. It's a long ways down, but there's lots that can go wrong. But if you put it in an oil reservoir, Christ, we know it was in there for 10 million years. That's a pretty good test.
Well, you kind of mentioned the other question, which is, what if you pump it in there underground and something happens to it that we can't predict? That's bad.
Yeah.
How do you know that's not going to happen? But you've just given me the answer. Can you go back over that?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's two places you can put it. Put it in the saltwater ocean.
That's a
moderate.
deep.
It's way down.
That maybe got some risks that we don't fully understand.
We don't have a clue about it. It's just like pure exploration. Right. We've never been there before. So we're drilling well one into that reservoir. We have a geologic idea, but we don't have a long-term test on what's going to happen. And sometimes when we put it down there, we're putting it in the ocean. And we know when we put it under pressure, the ocean shrinks a little bit. But it turns it's a big ocean, so a little bit means a lot of storage capacity. When I put it in there, there's cracks in the rock below it. So this is a big solid, it's like the Canadian Shield, and where it comes out in Western Canada is where we're putting this CO2 in the ground. It's cracked. It's been stable for 4 billion years before we got there. When we start putting a little bit of pressure on it, some of those cracks are going to move. That's called induced seismicity. And so many of the places where they've done this in the States, they've all of a sudden got a couple of earthquakes and then a couple more and then a bigger one. And these are like, they eventually get up to 6s and then they shut them down. So we don't know when we put CO2 in that saltwater ocean really what's going to happen. When we put it in an oil reservoir, we know exactly what's going to happen because it used to be gas in there under pressure and oil under pressure. When we put the stuff back in that we took out, it's going to be okay because it was okay before.
It's already been under pressure.
Yeah.
So we know it's tight.
Yeah. 10 million years.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what if you were to frack that, if it's a shale deposit, and then you do have seismicity risks to manage in an oil reservoir? Is that a case where we would have to be more cautious?
You always have to be super cautious, and we know how to do that. But you can think of it as I took oil out of that reservoir, I reduced the pressure. Right. So it went down, and I don't believe you're going to see much in the way of problems until you get above the pressure that it used to be at. Right. And I think there's really good science on this that, you think, well, if I got a balloon, as long as I don't get it too big, it's probably okay.
So in your opinion, Ian, if we invest in all of the carbon capture opportunities that we know about today, will we be able to make enough of a difference for what we're doing in the atmosphere?
There's no one solution to this stuff. There's thousands or hundreds of thousands of small solutions. So if you set the carbon price right, I might be able to inject CO2. Somebody might build a one-person car that's either a really small hybrid and really efficient or electric. If you just send the right signal, you say CO2 is so many dollars a ton. That's what you have to live in. We're not trying to mess with how you do it. Do it however you want. You have to scientifically verify that you've made a difference. You figure out the way. And we'll find some ways carbon sequestration is the cheapest way. We'll find some other places where one-person cars is a way better idea. Well, there'll just be thousands of solutions. And that's the way and that's where this place came from. There were thousands of solutions, and these were the ones that won. And so that process continues. It's evolutionary. It's not revolutionary. And whenever somebody starts talking about revolution, they're talking about really small scale effects. There isn't going to be any transformative thing. We're all smart enough to do this work to have thought of those things. There isn't there. There's no light bulb in this business.